Joan, good to have you back in chambers after your time served. Thank you for attending. Right, we have Robbie Frew first up on public forum, followed by Adele Alexander. So Robbie, if you'd like to come up, take the place up the front. Generally work to 5 minutes. I don't know how much you've got to say, but if you want to have a few questions at the end, welcome.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, I'm to do with the cycleway, and yeah, so I've written everything down here so I can figure out what I'm doing. Robbie Frew, Te Puke resident. There's nothing wrong with the cycleway in the right place, but not Cameron Boucher Avenues, as it links nothing, not even the town centre. And number one, it has near zero cycle zero cycle traffic, would be totally unsafe for children to and from school. I have OIA'd the schools in the area and they appear to agree. Number three, it does not make it any easier to get around Te Puke at all. And apparently the cycleway is going to open up our streets for people of all ages and abilities, and I don't quite understand that one. Comes from a document that was posted out to everybody in the vicinity of Cameron Boucher Avenues. So yeah, I don't understand that one, and it's going to reduce our emissions, but I'd have to check survey work on numbers of people using the roadway at present. I see this as not only poorly planned scheme, but one to fulfill a barrow for someone to push for a very limited few, and all above is merely a pretext to do so, you know, like my points. The 2002 LGA, which is the Local Government Act, amended in 2012, basically states that any works must be cost effective for households, which the scheme would not fulfill. There's also, if the cycleway was proposed, that there could be problems with the RMA. I have an OIA for the council for all information on surveys that should have been done before this was even proposed, and that is due back to me today, 20 working days, so we'll see what happens there. And personally, I've checked online to see about building a cycleway, and it is incredibly expensive, and the planning is rigorous. So how far the $2.4 million would go on something like that, one would have to check. Once I get OIAs back from other with other very concerning information I have, I will approach the Ombudsman and I will likely consider the mailer question in September, which was this one here, to be, what have I written here, to be pretty much void for many reasons once the OIA is exposed to me or supplied to me. To date, I have OIAs for the 4 schools, the Western Bay Council, you fellas, the Transport Department, and I have sent 2 letters to the Mayor, which I'm willing to send to anybody if they haven't read them, which is rather revealing. Now, the best place for a cycleway, frankly, would be something that everybody could enjoy, not just a limited few, nor on the pretext that children might be safer on a cycleway, which is apparently this cycleway is going to be part of the roadway, which, why would you want children to be cycling on a roadway, for goodness sakes? You know, a footpath, an operated footpath would be far smarter, but anyway. I think the best place for a cycleway would be to join the Kaikatea walk and cycleway to Makatū. Now, I hear that the New Zealand Railways were quite happy to provide a bridge from the walkway, Kaikatea walkway, towards Makatū. So that would make far more sense to me. Now, the $2.4 million that's spouted around is apparently it has to be used for something specific, which I'm not quite sure on, but I just wonder if that couldn't be channeled into providing a decent cycleway to Kaikatea to Makatū. That would make far more sense. I think heaps of people would use that rather than just two streets that virtually go nowhere. Anyway, well, thank you so much for your patience, and I managed to get through it. So.
Yeah, thanks, Robbie. Thanks. You raised a number of issues that have been included in the report, and your councillors from your area have definitely raised some of the alternatives that you have too. So I invite you to stay. If you want to stay for 20 minutes, this will be up for discussion or so. Once we deal with the Way Beach issue. But anyway, questions from councillors. Councillor Murray Bench.
Yes, Mr. Frew, please, could you just repeat, you said that the schools were in agreement. Were they in agreement with the cycleway, or were they in agreement with you that they didn't want it?
No, it appears that they're not interested in the cycleway at all, because part of the mail out was to say that it would make our children safer on a cycleway. But that's just crazy, and even the schools can see it. Why would you want to move children from a footpath, which has got a huge berm and a gutter towards, you know, that protects them from the traffic, move those children onto a cycleway, which is exposed to the traffic? I mean, anybody can see that. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah, okay.
Any further questions from councillors? Appears to be not. Thank you, Robbie, for coming in. Like I said, you're welcome to stay for 15 minutes. Hopefully we can, well, resolve the issue one way or the other and know more official information.
Thank you so much, but I've got my furry little mate in the car.
Okay. Yeah, you don't want to be had up for dog abuse. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Adele, if you'd like to come up. Thanks, Robbie. Yep, just push that red button and you're away. Our team online can hear you.
That one? Oh, sorry. Just bear with me 2 seconds. Hi, I'm Adele Alexander, a local resident of Te Puke, and I work as an area specialist for First National selling residential and lifestyle properties in Te Puke and around the close suburbs of Te Puke. I was born and raised in Te Puke, and all my schooling years were done in Te Puke, right from kindy to college. Yesterday afternoon, I emailed you, councillors and the mayor, all the results of a survey I put together for Te Puke residents with regards to the proposed cycleway. I hope you managed to find the readings. I've managed to read the findings. I understand that you're busy, so hopefully you got time. The main reason behind the survey was because talking to people in the public and also noting on social media that there were a lot of people that were not aware of the cycleway, understood much about the cycleway and or were against the cycleway. Yet they felt as residents their voice or opinion was not being heard. The advertising for the proposed cycleway from council was quite limited, and it felt that it was not as prominent as it should or could have been given the major decision that would be happening to the main roads in Te Puke. Sorry. I went online to complete the council survey myself, and I noticed that it wasn't about whether you wanted a cycleway, it was what design option do you prefer. Prior to this, I had no idea that a cycleway was even being considered along Boucher Ave and Cameron Road. This kind of raised alarm bells for me. How had I missed this, as it will be a significant change and impact, not just for these two main roads, but also for side streets and most of Te Puke. To many residents, it felt that the decision had been made and their voice or opinion was not going to be heard, and that council had not been open about the cycleway proposal, and it was sprung on them. So this was an opportunity for any resident to voice their opinion and hope that it will be heard at council level. I know that you can't make everyone happy, but there will always be people for and against proposed ideas and decisions. I also want you to be aware that I'm all for growth and development in Te Puke. I can go on, but if you want me to, yep. So talking to residents, they were scratching their heads as to who would be using the cycleway. I did say that the council are trying to encourage students to bike to schools. But for me, personally, to destroy two main roads in Te Puke for an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon, 5 days a week, seemed absolutely crazy and a huge waste of money. Currently, not many students cycle to school, and I personally don't believe that putting in a cycleway will make the numbers significantly increase. My son rode his bike to school occasionally to Fairhaven and quite a bit to intermediate when he attended those schools, and he still bikes a number of times a week to parks in Te Puke and has no issues with the roads, as he's been taught cycle safety. Yes, there are cyclist groups in Te Puke, and I do see them mainly going on the main road out of Te Puke. These cyclists are destination cyclists going for long bike rides and ending up somewhere like a cafe out of town, at the mount or to beach like Pukahina. They only use Boucher Ave and Cameron Road as a throughway to get to the road that takes them on a destination they headed to. These cyclists, and I have talked to quite a few of them, are all for a cycleway, however more of a destination cycleway, and the biggest comment is why not create a cycleway that meets up to the existing one. There are two major parks on Cameron Road that host a number of sporting events. To take up parking around Lit Park and Fairhaven, I will believe this will limit the people wanting to actually participate in sport in Te Puke. You go to Lit Park on a Saturday in winter, there could be 5 teams playing at once and a number of supporters for each team. If it gets too hard for people to access parks and support our local kids and senior teams, then we could possibly lose sportsmen or sportswomen as they will go outside of Te Puke to play at a club. We've had a number of great sports people coming from Te Puke to represent us through Te Puke, Bay of Plenty, New Zealand and other countries. Why would we want to lose these kind of people? Students will need to be dropped and collected from school still. Drop-off for schools is not as bad as pick-up. Drop-off, you just drop the kids off. Pick-up is the issue. When there is no parking near the schools in this proposal, where are the parents meant to park for their kids to be collected? When it rains at intermediate, the parking for parents currently goes a long way Cameron Road on either sides of the school into Williams Drive and Kyliemoor Place. Fairhaven, you have cars currently parked in Macbeth Drive, Fairview Place, Cameron Road and Fenton Terrace. Pickup is horrendous as it is now in bad weather, and I can't see the cycleway helping that. I also believe the values for properties on Cameron Road and Boucher Ave will decrease in value if the cycleway goes ahead. People will be reluctant to buy properties where at the end of their driveway is a cycleway, which would also mean that these properties become less desirable and harder to sell for homeowners. There is also a concern that the side streets of Te Puke like Tyne, Clydesburn, Mohau and Tui will become a throughway for vehicles as they will be turning away from Boucher Ave and Cameron Road.
So just about
Yep.
coming to an end. Yep.
And that's, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, and talking to people are really worried that the extra funding that will probably be required to complete this cycleway, because I don't believe the 2.4 million will be enough to cover it, will end up coming to the ratepayers to pay.
Thank you, Adele. Very thorough and very professional, and I see a future councillor sitting up the front there in the future. Well done.
Oh,
Right. In your spare time, of course, you could be going. Councillor Coxhead.
Thank you, Adele, and thanks for your effort. Just a question about the main demographic of your respondents. Was there a broad range of people from different age groups and demographic?
Yes, there was.
Yeah.
I didn't actually do the actual demographic, but it was mailbox dropped by myself and my mother in different streets, And we also put it up on social media, so anybody in the area could respond, and we did have out-of-town people responding as well.
Right, appears about all. Looks like you've done more work than me, Adele. I only have to read 200 pages on the report here, but you've done far more work, so well done to that.
you.
And if you'd like to sit and, wait a minute, we've got one final question, Councillor Murray-Bench.
Thank you, sir. You mentioned that you did all the letterbox drops. Did the people that you put the letters into their boxes, would they have known about it anyway? Or was your information the first they knew of it?
There is a slide in the thing I sent you. So there's, sorry, how did you hear about the cycleway? So the majority was local paper and newspaper, which was obviously when the council were advertising it. Facebook and social media was 22%, which is really quite high when in Te Puke we do have a generation that don't use social media.
My question is, were they well informed?
No, the response from residents, sorry. Do you feel that council provided you with enough information about the proposed cycleway? 73% said no, and 13% not sure, and 12 said yes. Okay.
Councillor Daly, seeing I said you're allowed some bonus questions today, go ahead.
Adele, thanks for coming in.
All right.
As a real estate agent, you've got a question about, or you mentioned that people thought their property values would be reduced by having a cycleway across the front of their property.
Yes.
Have you got, can you quantify, or has anyone suggested, or have you got any ideas what dollar value that might have on a property?
No, I don't. No, it's a bit hard at this stage, but yeah, I mean, you've got really some of the sections in Cameron Road and Boucher Ave are quite large sections, and there's always a potential that they're going to be subdivided as well off. I just feel that putting a cycleway through those main streets will devalue people's properties and will make it less desirable to live on those two streets.
So are you suggesting there's a problem with off-street parking,
Yeah.
especially as the town gets developed more intensely?
Yeah, and I mean, I know that there's a few developments going up Boucher Ave. Some are past Boucher, the Fairhaven. Some are trying to be before Fairhaven. And most people have 2 cars in a family nowadays on average. And I just feel that with the new builds that are going up, there's not enough parking as it is allocated in the developments that we're seeing. You can see that in Dunlop Road and you can see that in Tynan Street. So I just think, again, people have, if you've got teenage kids and they've got cars at home, those people aren't going to buy on Boucher Ave because you can't have 6 cars in your house. They might want to put them on the side street and they'd have to go on a side street somewhere, not on Boucher Ave or Cameron.
Well, thank you, Adele. We'll be back to Te Puke shortly, but
Oh.
quick question.
Hey, just in the question 7, does anyone in your household currently use bicycle for transportation and recreation in Te Puke? So you got a 74%. So that's a bit telling about, how we're trying to get people alternative transportation.
Yeah.
It's quite telling about that. Part of this reaction could be too is that people are just not using bikes anyway. So I guess the question is about how do we get people start looking at alternative transportation. Yeah. Just trying to echo, a little bit where we're coming from on that.
I don't think the residents are opposed to cycleways. More of a destination cycleway rather than a let's destroy our 2 main thoroughfares in Te Puke. We've got a lot of trucks going in and out of Boucher Ave for kiwi fruit. They're not opposed to it. It just they don't want it in their main streets of Te Puke.
Right, we'll wrap it up this time. Thanks, Adele.
No worries.
Thanks,
Yeah.
councillors. Right, councillors, page 6 of the agenda. We've moved to reports. Peter, welcome up. page 6 of the agenda, report 1, Waihi Beach rock revetment. Council landowner consented coastal protection works. And joining Peter is, I'll get Peter to introduce, Alan.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So joining with me is Alan and Andrew Fraser and Ash Boyd over in the background here as well. So they are the property owners and have approached us. So basically the report, I've just sum it up. So back in 2008, when we did the went through environment court process, originally council had proposed a rock revetment wall along the subject area, along this reserve. That was subsequently rejected and overruled at the time through an environment court process, somewhat to appease, I guess, some of the people appealing the consent process about wanting more softer options through there. So as a result of that, the area, I guess, southeast of the 3 Mile Creek was put into sand, and that's, as you know, when we did the sand up at Shore Road, a lot of it has washed away with weather events like we've had at the moment. And you can see in the pictures an attachment to the resulting erosion that's occurred there, and you can see the old exposed rock revetment that was there, which has just spilled all over the thing. So Alan and co have approached us to say that, you know, they're in a position they're willing to put in some rock revetment buried within the reserve and some partially out because the reserve narrows up by that property. At their cost, etc. But before they can pursue the matter any further with regards to consents and consultation of tangata whenua and other parties, I guess the key principle is that if the council doesn't support it, then they won't be able to go much further forward because we wouldn't permit their activity on reserve land. So hence today's decision is about a decision in principle about whether or not council approves of the work occurring on its reserve land as in your capacity as a landowner. And if so, then there's a process that these guys could move forward with a bit of confidence, knowing that they've kind of like ticked that box in the process. There'll still be a lot of stuff to go through with regional council under resource consents and requirements. More than highly likely that'll all be notified, given the past history of sea walls up at Waihi Beach. But that's a process. These guys are aware of those risks associated with the consenting process and are willing to work through what needs to be worked through. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell from my perspective. Alan and Andrew is over here today if you have any queries from as elected members to ask them as landowners. They're more than happy to try and help clarify that.
Alan, before I open up the question, do you want to add anything just from a landowner perspective? You've read the reporters like we have.
Yep.
Everything included in there?
Am I on here?
Yep.
Okay. Oh, thank you. So we own a couple of the 7 titles along the beach. We're coming up to 30 years on the beach. My wife is a Waihi born and bred lady. There wasn't a big discussion as to which beach we'd go to buy a beach house. Her grandfather was, interestingly, one of the very first people to go to the cottages at the northern end 100 years ago, where the miners rehabilitated the health of their workers. So we've had a long history with Waihi Beach and Waihi. We began this discussion with council by catching up with Gary Ellis after the Gabrielle and hail storms earlier in the year. Gary assisted us to advance the project, but it did need our waterfront owners group over the 7 titles to be totally supportive, and he made that very clear. We have achieved that. We now have a group of 7 titles, all in a group. We had a briefing session with Cedric and Peter in early September, and our submission forms part of Peter's report as an attachment. I suppose what we want to achieve today is to reconfirm to council on behalf of our residents group owning the properties that front the ocean, that the residents are willing to develop and deliver long-term erosion protection and to seek council support to allow us to apply for a resource consent with your approval. I think that's probably all that I need to say, other than Andrew and I are happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you very much. Right, councillors, you've read the report. This is your opportunity to ask any questions of Peter or Alan or Andrew, as the two of the landowner representatives. Any points you have before we move on to those recommendations that are listed on page 6? So in your hands. Oh, Councillor Joyce, I have online.
Yep, sorry. I'm off mute. Sorry, new computer, working my way around. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Cool. So the only question I have really is this, is this being proposed for 5 meters across from the private land? Is there any reason why this couldn't be done on the 7 property owners' private land?
The information that's been presented, you were seeing the attached report a little bit from Tonkin and Taylor. It's pretty much in line with what was originally proposed and all that design work that's been put in place for the original proposal. So that's my understanding, is that offset is the best location for the work to occur, and also it does get very close. You might see there's a swimming pool near the boundary and other associated vegetation that they'd like to keep there, some of the biggest shrubs and whatever. But that's my understanding of that, Councillor Joyce, is that this is the most appropriate design, preliminary concept design for the actual location. So I don't think it can go any closer without compromising that original design thought.
Okay. So, I'd like to hear some clearer reasoning. Perhaps property owners, might be able to help us. What's stopping it happening on private land? I don't see where the council's interest is in preserving that reserve, bearing in mind that we've had one go with sand and that didn't work. Perhaps another question also is, it's this pushing up sand has worked elsewhere. Why hasn't it worked here?
Just on the first question regarding private land versus the reserve. I mean, these properties are very close to 3 Mile Creek, which is a cause of erosion locally. 3 Mile Creek discharges wastewater, stormwater and runoff through a man-made diversion to the coast. So, I mean, I think it's clear that there's an erosion effect from that, and that effectively the community's discharge of water onto the beach is jeopardising private property. We as the owners of those properties are willing to pay for the mitigation for those effects, but we think it's appropriate that that be located on council property. I guess the other advantages of it being on the council property are it does preserve some of the reserve that remains. A lot of reserve has been lost in the last few years, but that's a benefit in terms of wildlife. And also, if the pedestrian access were ever required at the top of the wall, that's obviously able to be provided if the wall is located on public property.
That, if I could just add, the issue of the 5 metres also appears in the current resource consents. The current resource consents address the 5 metre thing in the enhanced dune failure situation. It allowed beach scraping when a dune was eroded to within 5 metres of the private boundaries, and that was a trigger to allow beach scraping to bring sand onto the dune to re-establish the enhanced dune. Everybody is aware that the enhanced dune was a failure, and you could not keep chasing your tail trying to scrape sand off and build dunes that get washed away again. So not only did Tonkin and Taylor at the very outset choose the 5 metre dimension, but the resource consent process also picked up on it in that way. So the other thing Andrew's referred to, council have asked that if we do this at 5 metres, then they have the rights, of course, to passage over the 5 metre zone. And we think that that will be a great help to the community. It'll be a great help to any passage that's needed for maintenance of the top of the wall. It will allow the private forefronts to be undisturbed. It will essentially enhance the recovery of the wildlife sanctuary that we have in front of us. I don't know if people know, but we have our own mating pair of dotterels, and we have our family of pheasants. We have all sorts of skylarks, and we have the world supply of insects for all of the swallows. It's a very, very live and wild dune. And I think that if we can retain as much of it as we can, and certainly that's what we're looking to do with the northern part. The dotterels, by the way, are probably within 10 metres of 3 Mile Creek. So we're looking to try and preserve as much of that wild dune as we possibly can. And the 5 metres certainly helps at the back.
Right, thanks, Alan. Mayor James.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have two questions. Firstly, in terms of cost, I see that the wall will be paid for by the landowners, and that there's modest ongoing maintenance costs and funded from the targeted rate, and I'm fairly comfortable with that. But what about the eventual capital cost of replacement? Are we planning to fund depreciation in this one? I mean, the idea is, are we going to get a multi-million-dollar replacement cost in a few decades' time? So that's my first question.
Yes, the idea is that the asset would vest into council ownership at the end of it, and that would then attract depreciation for a replacement wall, if that's what the long-term solution is. And it'd just be added to as a percentage to the scale of what's already in place on council's books for depreciating existing seawall. So we don't have the final, I guess, costs on that at this point in time, because the design hasn't been totally concluded. It's just in its conceptual stage at this point in time.
So it's not the numbers I want, it's just that it's a concept that depreciation will be funded from this, for this project.
Oh, sorry, Cedric will just respond to that.
Through the chair. So I think that's part of the process that we need to work through. Obviously, this is just agreement in principle. So I think there's bigger, a bit of work to work through that there, although it'll be vested to council. We need to discuss the disposal or replacement as part of the wider part of work before we come back to council, because potentially with climate change and other bits and pieces, we still need to factor that in as if the the sea is coming so far forward, it may not be practical to actually, there might not be a replacement method for that in years to come. So that all needs to be worked through as part of this process that would come back to elected members. So definitely agree with Peter that it'd be vested, but potentially there may not actually be a replacement period, so we may not need to depreciate, but that all needs to be worked through.
Right, thank you. My second question, Peter, is I noticed there isn't a Section 80 acknowledgement in the recommendations. Do you feel that ought to be there? So an inconsistent policy decision.
There is not a detailed
so it's in the
analysis,
report, but it's not in the recommendations.
Yeah.
And I'm just asking whether it should be in the recommendations, just to acknowledge that.
Yes, well, yes, it should be. If we could add something in there.
So perhaps I'll foreshadow that I might move that, or suggest that, or you can suggest it. Anyway, thank you.
Councillor Murray-Bench.
Peter, it's a question for you, please. When we did the rock revetment last time, the dunes were done at the same time. They failed. Has the rock revetment survived, and how successful has that been?
As I think I covered in the report, the rock revetment has served its purpose and function. It's never been designed to stop overtopping. That will occur. But as your lead controller of civil defence, we were very pleased with how it, I guess, repelled the effects of Cyclone Gabriel and hail earlier this year. And even with the amount of wind up there yesterday, I know we've got a lot of sand movement. We've got Flat White Cafe is pretty much the reserve near is buried. The bollards are nearly buried. They're 400 millimetres high. And the area of push-up sand now has more sand on that there. But the rock wall has certainly held up and served its purpose and function in that space.
Question. I look at St Clair, a fabulous place in Dunedin, and they've got a rock wall and the tide thrashes against that all the time and it survives. And in Christchurch, you've got Sumner Beach and it's got a rock revetment along it, and it survives for generations. And more importantly, the people can actually access, and hundreds of people, the last time I was down in Christchurch, they were using that beach and that walkway, and it survives. Has the Regional Council changed its mind in its opposition to hard structures?
I guess the test for that will be through the consent application.
I'll just refer to our Deputy CEO, who's got something to add.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Just to add that it's important to recognise that it's the New Zealand Coastal Policy Statement that has express objectives in it against hard engineering in dynamic coastal environments. So the Regional Council is legislatively required to give effect to the New Zealand Coastal Policy Statement. And in turn, that flows down to council. So it's actually not a regional council policy position. It is reflected in the New Zealand Coastal Policy Statement.
Thank you. Right, time for the deputies. We'll go from Deputy C to Deputy Chairman and then Deputy Mayor. So Deputy Chairman next.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for everybody. Number one actually is just a comment. You guys, I really appreciate that you've seen a problem and you've looked at it in advance, and that's always great. You know, people have got to start taking responsibility and thinking what's happening. Well done. But I also actually earlier felt fairly strongly that it should be as understood, perhaps something more on your own property as opposed to in front. In this time, you've alleviated my issues there, so a lot more anyway. Let's put it that way. Because I have had concerns about our use of reserve land, which is everybody's reserve, not just ours at Waihi Beach. It's everybody's within the district, etc. So the other issues that Mayor James brought up has taken care of that for me relatively. It does leave a little bit of a problem. So my question to you is, along with the unforeseen consequences, and that's one of the things, is what will the effect of this wall potentially be on the Island View Reserve South? What effect will it have on the sand and banks there? Have we any research, or have you had any research done as to what that will do? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I think the answer to it is that once we commission the design team to design the wall, they will need to address what happens to the southern corner as far as end plate effect is concerned. We're well aware of that. It will add additional cost to the wall, but the idea would be to make sure that end plate effect is as minimal as it can be, given that it's unprotected land adjacent. So at this stage, that hasn't been looked into in detail. We're aware of it. Gary Ellis, when he briefed us on this, part of the reason he said we needed to get the entire number of people going in the same direction on this issue was that he didn't want an end plate effect right up against 3 Mile Creek dunes, training groins. And so we solved the problem there by essentially taking the wall right to that end. But on the other end, there isn't really anything to terminate it apart from open space. So we will need to look at how the end of the wall is transitioned from a wall through to open space.
But I think any effects at that end would be, I think any effects at that end would be quite localised. Any impact on the wall, it wouldn't affect a large proportion of the reserve.
No.
I'm sorry. Any effects on the reserve are likely to be quite localised, not affecting a large part of the reserve land.
Right, Deputy Mayor, and then we'll look to wrap hopefully this up. This is just to get to the start line, remember, team. But anyway.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just interested in the impact on the reserve land. You talked about the various species that are resident there, and obviously there will be some impact during construction. And my question may be a bit premature until you've actually got a final design, but how is it envisaged that the wall will be finished? Will it be a heap of rocks sticking up out of the dune, or will they be kept down and sand perhaps and plantings over the top, or roughly how do you see that happening?
Through Mr. Chairman, I would suggest that if the residents employed Tonkin and Taylor, they'd use the same design of tying in the rocks that occurs on council's existing rock wall back into the loop and that type of thing. So it just ties it back in, tapers it down, and you transition from sand dune to through to from the rocks here. It doesn't just stop like boom like that. It's a tied in thing here. So I'd suggest I'd use the same design principles that's existing on council's rock wall.
Right, councillors, I direct your attention to the recommendations on page 6 of the report, flowing over to page 7. How much detail you will need on page 7? Do I have someone prepared to start the Councillor Mobench?
Happy to move 1 to 4, and I think there's an extra one to come.
Yep,
Would
Deputy
you like me
Mayor.
to suggest that if Councillor Murray Bench would like to include this in her recommendations, something along the lines of council notes that this decision is not consistent with its erosion responses, I'll put the words here, responses policy 2017, and that this is an inconsistent decision, but council is not intending to alter its policy as a result. I'm happy if staff would like to tidy that up slightly.
Well, there was a bit of wriggle room in we're not totally inconsistent, but anyway, I take your point. So you're prepared to are you prepared to put that in?
I'm choking on it at the moment. Peter, can you interpret that for me?
No, it might be our role.
Yeah, like I think as the chairman said, it's in my comments in the report about that inconsistency, I don't see it as being a big thing, considering that there was originally this council wanted to do a rock wall there. It has also supported the area from 41 Shore Road to the Flat White Cafe in its previous decision. So it's just about, I guess, acknowledging there about having that, noting that it's not totally consistent. I don't know exactly what the words need to be there. It's
good old
not
Mayor
entirely consistent.
transition from the section 17 to something completely different after foreshadowing. Good work, Mayor.
It's not totally my forte. That's part of the act. Sorry.
Right, team. Where are we going to sit on this possible new number 5 to the recommendation? Or
Acknowledging that it's not totally consistent with.
not totally. That might be a good wriggle worm. Word. Thank you.
Yes, not totally consistent. However, we support the move to the hearing.
No, Margaret Murray just moved it, and then you seconded
Oh,
it,
John.
and we're arguing about under the little phrase to add to it that we're not totally consistent, rather than, I think the mayor used the word, we're not consistent. If he were to accept we're not totally consistent, might be enough to appease him. Are you happy with that, Mayor Daniel? If we use the word not totally consistent, because yeah,
I agree, not totally might be fine. But if shall I repeat it just so Caroline can, I've tied it up slightly. Council notes that, notes that this decision is not totally consistent with Council's erosion responses policy 2017. Council is not intending to alter its policy as a result.
We could leave that last bit off.
No. No, you need that because this is about Section 80 thing. So I would also add this resolution acknowledges Section 80 of the LGA.
okay. So, Councillor Murray, just with you either accept this or we move to an amendment. You can live with that, okay?
So Councillor Murray Bench has moved.
We do 1, 2, 3, 4, and this new will become a 5 with the mayor's addition, and second by Mayor Denia. Right, open for discussion, councillors. Okay, thank you.
I think this is really important because the people of Waihi Beach are so protective of the whole place, and it's not something that they bring lightly to us, and the protection of the sand and the rocks and everything. That beach is so important to this sub-region, and anything we can do to protect it, I think, is really vitally important. And so I'm extremely supportive of the move, and I hope it's not going to cost you too much to get planning approval, but that's going to be hideously expensive, I suspect. As for keeping it within council's policy, the reality is that the dunes didn't work before, and that was council policy. So I think the argument is there, sir, for them to justify an alternative, and I wish them well, because it's an important beach to protect, and anything we can do to protect that beach should be paramount in this council's view.
Tunes might
In my
have
opinion.
something to do with the Environment Court, but we'll pass that over our favourite organisation. Mayor Denia.
Yeah, I just want to say, look, recognise we're not the decision makers here, but we do have an effective veto should we use it. It should go to the regional council for consent, where all the environmental effects can be considered. So I'm happy that it goes forward to for the consenting and effects to be considered there, and we'll be supporting the motion. Thanks.
Councillor Sol, you wish to speak to this, and then followed by Councillor Joyce.
Thank you, sir. Yes, as I said earlier, it does concern me in many ways that perhaps it's not something as has been previously adopted really by the council, that you support people doing this sort of thing on their own property and wouldn't get in the way. The fact is, I feel that the people have mitigated a lot of this, and the reasons behind using general land or council land, local reserve, the potential perhaps to secure, yes, dotterels and other such things, seems to be taking a very strong direction in our community these days, and I basically do support that. So in many ways, sir, I will be prepared to support it. It does concern me, the unforeseen consequences, but I guess we've always got those in anything we have. And so it now just, I would agree that it move on towards the regional council and an application as is stated in the motion. So let's move on with it.
Thank you, Councillor Joyce, followed by Councillor Wickers.
Yeah, I mean, I am conflicted by this. I think we should be very clear. This is not to protect the beach. This is to protect the houses, and the residents are quite clear on that, and their properties, and that's why they're willing to fund it. And I don't have a problem with that. I mean, if I was in that position, I'd probably feel the same way. In fact, I probably definitely would feel the same way. I do think this is going to cause a great deal of controversy in Waihi Beach. You know, there have been, even in recent times, discussions of seawalls and things, and there are two bodies of opinion. I'm happy for it to go to the regional council and have a full hearing. I still think it would be a much easier path if it was on the residents' own land. And I think, I'd invite you to have a good look at that, because it would remove a lot of the heat from the argument from which you face. The fact that it's already been to the Environment Court shows that it is controversial, and it will be controversial in the Waihi Beach community. But I think the landowners probably already know that. So I'm not telling you anything you don't know. But yeah, happy for it to go to the regional council. I still think there may be a better way to achieve what you want to achieve without landing yourself back in the Environment Court.
Councillor Wickers.
Yeah, I'm happy to support the motion, just noting that fighting the forces of nature over time, you potentially will lose, just as long as it doesn't bind us as a council to having to deal with this down the track at a cost to ratepayers.
Right, councillors, you all happy? Oh, Councillor Coxhead.
I'm also happy to support this move in principle, based on the fact that you've done the homework yourselves and you're prepared to pay for it particularly too. So I applaud you for that. And yes, I agree there might be some further hurdles to overcome, but yeah, well done.
Right, right of reply from Mover.
Thank you, sir. I just wanted to add, the previous problem was because the cost was falling on the whole of the Waihi Beach community. Part of it was, and they were uptight because they felt they had no benefit from it and they didn't want to pay. And here we've got a group of 7 people who are happy to fund the whole thing. And you cannot deny that takes away a lot of the pressure from the wider community. So I'm very happy to support the motion, sir.
Right, councillors, you're all happy that you understand the new 5 that was outlined by Mayor Denyer? Yep, that's not totally consistent, so that's fine. So I will put recommendation 1, 2, 3 as listed and a new 4 just with that point. All those in favour? Aye. Those against? I declare it carried. Thank you. Good luck, gentlemen, for your next step, and ladies, to your next step of the process, and who knows.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time and patience.
Cheers.
Thank you very much.
Right, councillors, hopefully the length of this next report in terms of pages doesn't equate to debating time. I think there is maybe, no, I won't preempt anything. I'll turn your attention to page 30 of the report and bring up Comm. Now, Cedric, you've inherited this. This project started before you were appointed, so you get a bit of a free pass to hand it round. Pretty comprehensive report. Callum, are you going to speak to it, or Cedric, do you want to introduce it? Oh, Callum.
Just before we go to the presentation, Scott's got an update from Waka-Kotahi regarding the funding situation.
We've got all the fund. No, we don't. So the update from Waka-Kotahi is that they've asked across the country that they're just putting a pause on the implementation funding for this project. Okay.
That might make this really short debate then, if that's the case of a new government in place.
Yeah, so that's probably all I need to say to that. Yeah, so essentially there's no funding for the implementation, the construction of it across the country. Yeah.
Great designs.
Yeah.
Right, Callum, is there anything to add to that?
No, my understanding is that elected members are fully acquainted with this project, and happy to answer any questions.
Right, Councillor Daly, it's all yours. Litigate it out.
Well, just a quick question. Scott, was there an add-on to your statement about Waka-Kotahi's wanting to pause the implementation?
No, there was just a bit of detail around it. Essentially, that the rationale that they've given for the pause is because they're waiting to see what the direction of the government's going to be. That's all. That's essentially it.
Right, we've got a question from Councillor Joyce, then followed by Councillor Crawford, unless he's going to move one of our recommendations on there. But Councillor Joyce.
So, if I understand the residents correctly, what they're objecting to, a lot of it is the loss of car parks. Is there a way to do this using the very wide berms across much of the route, that would allow us to use this pause to redesign it so that we do more on the berm, much more on the berm, and less in the carriageway.
Yes, but the cost would increase and we would be required to take out a lot of the street trees, which I think would be of concern to the community.
Good answer. Councillor Crawford.
Yeah, just a question about that pause, Scott. So doesn't mean it's totally off the table, like in the future? No, I just want to highlight that.
Yeah, that's our understanding. Yeah, I mean, there was the previous decision that they made to extend the time frame by a whole 12 months through to June 2025. But this is additional to that now. So the project isn't cancelled, it's just on pause.
So then that opens the question about, so the proposal was there another alternative design or doing something with that money? And from the report it says that you didn't have time to submit another plan, so the timelines. Seeing that this has happened now, will that open the door, to explore other options?
No, because the deadline for the Schedule 2, which is basically our application for implementation funding, still stands. So we've missed that deadline now. So we would be lucky to even get implementation funding now for what we've proposed, never mind an alternative route.
Right, councillors, I'm in your hands as when we transition from questions to recommendations, unless someone's really burning with a question. Councillor Vickers.
I'd like to move recommendation 1, 2 and 4 and would like to speak to it. Thanks.
Page 30. Has anyone got any underlying? Grant will second that. Councillor Daly will second that.
Yeah, I'm happy to second that.
And if anyone's got any burning questions that I've overlooked for you, well, I'm happy to accommodate it in the discussion now. So it's been moved, Wickers 1, 2 and 4, basically that it's consigned to the cabinet full of designs. Councillor Murray-Bench, you wish to speak to it?
Yes, I support the recommendations, the amendments that Councillor Wickers has brought forward. It's most unusual to see so many people opposed to the proposal. That was the thing that struck me most of all, and the submissions that we've had this morning just confirmed that. So wonderful thing to have people actually having an opinion and expressing it and letting us know, because I look at Tauranga City and the stuff up they're doing on one of their roads with cycleways and cutting out all the parking. And it really is causing really social serious issues for a lot of people. And I think the submissions we've had this morning from people highlight the negative impact that this would have on the use of those roads. So very happy to support the moves by Councillor Wickers.
Thank you. Councillor Joyce.
So I think really important here is that we went out to consultation. We've got a very clear message. As one of our elected members said recently, there's no point going to consultation unless you're willing to listen. And I think the voice has been very clear. People like cycleways. Obviously, even Adele's survey showed that not a lot of people are cycling yet, but there's a sort of a cart and horse type thing there. If we had better facilities, would more people cycle? But we need to do it in a sympathetic way, in the way that has the community support. We don't have the community support. And now that the funding has all but disappeared, bearing in mind we know the priorities of the new government, they've been quite open about them. I think this project unfortunately has not worked. The public don't want it. To push on in the face of the results of consultation, both our own and what we've heard today, would be incorrect. I do take note that people feel that the consultation was not even-handed enough. They weren't given an option, they feel, to reject the proposal in the survey that was given to them. I think we need to be very careful in future to make sure we allow for people to pick the status quo. It's not just about building things and pushing it through. And certainly there is a perception in the community that that is the case in this case. So we should learn from that. We've had a similar case in Katikati before my time. what colour concrete would you like? And so I think we do need to remember we're not there to promote things, we're there to put things in front of the community, both sides of the story. But certainly in this case, with the funding disappearing and the public opposed to it, I think the answer is pretty simple. So I'm with Andy Wickers and Councillor Daly in their recommendation, in their motion.
Thank you, Councillor Joyce. Right, I'll follow the hands as I saw them. I've got Deputy Mayor Scrimmager, followed by Sol, followed by Coxhead, followed by the Mayor, and then rounded out as the seconder of the motion, and then last rights might go to Mr. Wickers. So, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, well, Councillor Joyce has covered off pretty well the issue of consultation with the community, so I won't add any more to that, but I just want to reinforce the point that Scott made, that with the funding, or if I interpret his comments correctly, the funding is at best unlikely, and Council is not in a position to fund this ourselves anyway, and I think Council has more than enough to do in the transport space right at present, and our focus should be in other places for the next year or two. And so I think we need to put this aside, support this motion as it stands, and think about it in the future when we can come up with a plan that is more acceptable to the community.
Thank you, Mr. Finance Chairman. Right, where was it? So, Alan.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, basically, I totally support Councillor Joyce and others there. The situation is even when you get down to it, the research done by us was not giving the opportunity of status quo, and I believe that's always an option that should be placed there. And we're facing something similar at present in Athenry. The reality here is I looked at some things there, and the research that council staff did was great. There was extra parking, or there was parking that was unused on the side streets, etc. But I then looked at my current situation, unable to walk, having to use a thing to be able to park anywhere near buildings and places I need to go. There's just no provision in here for people like that that have mobility issues. So that again brought me into it and thinking very hard. And to be quite frank, we're talking at present ideology against reality. The reality is people are going to drive around in cars. They're going to move around in cars. Maybe how they're powered is going to change, but cars are an ongoing mode of transport and will continue to be so for a very long time, I believe. So I'm really pleased to support the motion, not to progress. Thank you.
Tracy.
I'm happy to support Councillor Worker's motion as well, support rather. And I think we have to learn from this with the best intentions in the world, obviously, but our consultation approach has not necessarily hit the mark this time. I think we need to take that on board. I also think in the face of overwhelming community support opposed to this, possibly because of the way we've handled it too, there's nothing else we can do but support this. I have a question as well. Is this move to get everybody walking, cycling, etc., which isn't a bad initiative, of course, but is this always contingent on the flip side being that vehicles are to be reduced, car parks reduced, and get people out of cars as well? Is that the general flavour is what I'm picking up anyway?
Well, this project was to be funded from the climate emergency response fund. So one of the specific goals of this project from Waka Kotai was to reduce the amount of car journeys and reduce the amount of vehicle emissions by reducing the amount of car journeys. So, but in general, there is a need for modship, because whilst the number of car journeys is increasing, our ability to actually upgrade roads to accommodate those additional vehicles, those additional journeys is becoming more and more constrained. So really, with respects to multi-mode shift, in general, the reason is because we cannot, there's a limit to the amount of additional vehicles we can accommodate on our roads.
Mayor James.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you know, I'm not afraid to make the tough decisions and to choose the right decision over the popular decision. But in this case, I'm far from convinced that this project is the right decision, and it certainly isn't the popular one. Encouraging mode shift and providing quality infrastructure is a good thing, and I'm absolutely supportive of that, but I'm disappointed about the unnecessarily tight timeframes, the lack of flexibility and options to choose a better solution, or indeed a different cycleway. There are any other number of cycleways that we could have or would have preferred over this one. There is not even a meaningful way to respond to the concerns that the consultation raised. I also acknowledge issues with the genesis of this project and how the survey was formulated. That came through loud and clear during the consultation, and it was clear that just antagonised people, unfortunately. Nevertheless, I thank all those who put in the mahi, Scott, Callum, and others, to get us this far, but it's going to be a no from me. Well, as in supporting Andy Wicker's motion.
Councillor Daly.
I'm a bit sad about this, but not for the obvious reason, but I think the scoping phase, there was enough leeway within what was within scope for this project that we could have concentrated on areas within Te Puke that might have been more amenable to public support. I think concentrating on Upper Cameron and Boucher was a recipe for failure. The outcome was entirely predictable. I think we had some early meetings, or a couple of early meetings, where I think I certainly made myself clear that this outcome was inevitable. However, reading the submissions, I think there are comments within comments and that point to what people would be more amenable to, e.g. shared pathways, widening footpaths versus on-road cycle lanes. And Rodney alluded to that. I think, you know, that is a valid point, and elements of the design did include shared pathways, which only fairly small sections, unfortunately, and like Rodney said, because of Callum said, because of the trees and the power poles, it's just not possible to have a continuous wide shared pathway into Puke's footpaths in that area. But connecting from the high school to the other side of the railway lines to the lower socio-economic parts of Te Puke, there was some possibilities to improve the walking and cycling experience for kids going to school from that side of town. They might not have a bicycle, but you know, bikes aren't that expensive these days, and maybe having the opportunity would actually encourage more people to cycle. We did meet during our I rode around the proposal with a couple of people, and we looked at the whole thing and how it worked, and we actually met some young kids riding bikes while we did that, and they were, I think they would sort of kids that would ride to school whatever was provided. But and when I was a kid, and most of us probably rode our bikes to school, and it was either on a narrow footpath or on the side of the road, and we sort of just took our chances. But there is an opportunity to make things a bit safer for kids wanting to cycle to school. It's unfortunate that there is such resistance, but I acknowledge that this wasn't the right solution. And in terms of the engagement approach, I think we sort of did make a mistake, because there was a strong public perception that it was a predetermined done deal, and rather than ask the public for their thoughts, and that's a bit unfortunate. But overall, it is an opportunity lost. It's not every day you get offered that sort of money on a plate with no cost to the ratepayers, and I'm just disappointed we couldn't have done something to actually utilise that money, even though it looks like it probably would have been pulled out from under us anyway with the new government. So anyway, with that, I'll second the motion. I'll be voting for it.
Councillor Crawford.
Yeah, I too just want to express my disappointment with this. Just think back to when we made changes to the Main Street in Te Puke and Jubilee Park. I wasn't on council in that time, but was living in the town. And, you know, just those who had a vision to, you know, see that space changed wasn't, you know, entirely received by the town, but, you know, those who lived there and dwell there are now really appreciating, you know, the decision, you know, that decisions made back then. So I recognise the survey and those who are not for it, but what I'm disappointed about, and maybe, you know, we should be still looking at encouraging cycle walkways, is that, you know, talking to some of the schools, a lot of them have got empty bike racks stacked up behind their things, because there was a time, you know, when people rode to school and that stopped, you know, and, you know, Alan, Councillor Sol was talking about cars are here to stay. Well, I kind of disagree with that. I think we need to be really encouraging, you know, people for all sorts of reasons, you know, not only just the carbon emission targets that we're trying to achieve, but also health, you know, wise. You know, we're seeing a lot more kids sitting behind video games and doing non-activities, you know, where they're not exercising, and actually having to go to school is one of those activities where they do exercise, you know, to get there. So hopefully, you know, that we could find a way in the future, you know, to achieve this. You know, a lot of people I talk to about sometimes it takes courage for those who sit in spaces that plan for the future and, you know, prepared to put their hands up to make those hard decisions for the benefit. And not everybody is privy or dives deep into reasons why things are done, but that's why we have people who put their hands up to help make decisions on behalf of those who live in their communities. And, you know, so that's part of my disappointment, because, you know, as Grant said, you know, this was an opportunity that wasn't a cost to the ratepayers, and it presented itself to us. And, you know, just, I bike that circuit twice a week, you know, with a group of guys. And you know, I feel that if you create it, people will use it, you know. Just in that survey that we saw this morning, or heard about presented this morning, it was quite interesting that 70-odd% of people don't ride bikes. So there is a feeling about people who are anti-cyclists on the road, and that's something we're always going to be fighting against. But does that, you know, make us stop making decisions about creating them? Even as talked about Cameron Road and Te Puke and what that's happened there. But, you know, I feel that, you know, because I've seen in Rotorua a very similar situation what we're proposing in Te Puke operating, and looks really good and pretty well received. And so sometimes, you know, we need to be able to make. So hopefully we can find a way forward in the future to create, you know, some safe ways. A lot of parents I talk to, the only reason why their children aren't riding to school is because they feel it's unsafe as it is now. And also the other thing that has been mentioned is the speed of the traffic that comes roaring down Cameron Road and Belcher Ave, you know, because it's slightly downhill, and trucks and cars are going way, way too fast. And this would have given us an opportunity to, you know, help control the speed past, you know, our 4 schools, you know, and that in itself is a safety thing. So anyway, that's my feelings, but, you know, I will support it because our community has, you know, largely said no to it for those who live in that area, and we've got to listen to them. So I'll support the recommendation.
Right, Councillor Wickers, close this out for us, please.
Alrighty. Yeah. Well, first off, I want to thank the council staff. They saw an opportunity to secure funding to progress the infrastructure in Te Puke. So we really appreciate the fact that you saw it and you took the opportunity. It was always going to be like wrangling a wild bull, this one. And I supported advancing it because I thought it was only fair that if the opportunity was there and it could become a possibility, that it should go to the community. And so even though I didn't think it was a particularly great idea, I thought that the idea was worth progressing to the community and see what they had to say. So the key issue for me why I can't support it is that we consulted and they've told us that they don't want it. They don't want it. And so this really is an issue of trust and integrity that we consulted, they've said no. So if we were to go against that, we're making a rod for our back into the future that I just don't think $2.4 million is worth the loss of trust and the skepticism that would grow out of this, that we would then be facing ongoing into the future. So really appreciate that the opportunity was taken, but based on the fact that we put an idea out, we consulted, they said no, I couldn't support progressing that. So thank you again.
Thank you, Councillor Wickers. I'll put that recommendations 1, 2 and 4 as moved by Councillor Wickers, second by Councillor Daly. I'll put that. All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? I declare it carried. Thank you all. Thank you, Adele. I see you're still here, so well done. You've seen it come through. Councillors, you're making a very strong case for a streamlined council in the next term of 9 councillors and a mayor because I thought I might as well be controversial, seeing it's morning tea, but if everyone's going to speak to everything, the poor reporter will never get out of here to publish a newspaper because she'll be listening to 13 people speaking. But anyway, that's my 2 cents worth. Anyway, we will adjourn till 11 o'clock. Those online, if you wait till we join us, we have the infrastructure report and then we'll move directly into the workshop. We have NCTA in 1 hour from now. So Okay, councillors, page 231, operational risk and scorecard report. Do we have Rodney back and Alan? Yep, looks like Alan's back with his crutch there. I'll take the report largely read. We went through a bit of this at forum the other day. If anything comes out, in fact, I'll kick it off, and that's the report we've had. It's been around for a while on buildings and subdivisions. Those graphs are just so hard to read by me. I just wonder if there's any chance of like a table with some numbers. I know people love graphs because they picture tells 1,000 words, but I can't read them because they're so small. But anyway, that's not a real big thing. The bigger issue is the lack of houses, and for once, Te Puke now's ruling the roost and has taken over Mokoroa and anywhere else in the district, and Te Puke rules the waves. Grant's been waiting 12 years for that to happen, so he's finally gotten to first place. Grant, so well done.
That'll be Adele's next project, is to make sure the growth is managed well.
Oh, lots of houses to sell in Te Puke, yeah. Right, any other questions from the scorecard or the review? We did go through the Mokoroa roundabout. Oh, Rodney's got his hand up, so I'll start with Rodney while the rest of you, and then I'll come back to Margaret and Tracy. Rodney.
Just a quick question. Obviously, yes, Te Puke is doing well and Katikati's up there, but I mean, are we seeing any budgetary implications from the slowing growth? You know, is it, I mean, it's not a question really for Cedric, it's really a question for our Adele, really, but the numbers aren't where we expected them to be. Is that a financial issue for the council?
Rachel's going to answer that for you, Rodney. Oh, she's got to find Adele. I thought she could cover everything. You're Deputy Chief Executive. Come on, step up to the plate.
Okay, perhaps we'll get an answer later.
Wait, Matt. Well, John Hollyoak goes to those meetings. He's got something. No.
Yeah, that's fine. That's cool.
Okay. Right, we'll go to you, Margaret. Any question you had to answer? We'll go to Tracy then. Who won?
I was just curious, like we've got 3 orange alerts here, if you want to call them that. I'm just wondering, what exactly do you have to do to become red?
You're not far wrong. Well, probably the roading one's close to red.
I think from a pure risk matrix perspective, it's what we're doing is signalling to you that there's a lot of work going on in that space and contingencies are being worked through. And for these 3 in particular, we have plans in place, but there's still a bit of uncertainty around that so it's one of those ones where we've got a mitigating plan in place, but we need that to unfold a bit more before we can really address the risks and take that from an orange back to, say, yellow.
Adele, do you have a speaker over there? Adele, you can speak. Well, I had a question from Councillor Joyce just about the implications now on the way FinCos are tracking and the implications on the budget.
Yeah, just through the chair. So in terms of where we're at year to date for the current financial year, we've received income of $6 million against a year to date budget of $3 million to the end of September. And that's predominantly due to timing. And if, you know, we've probably got more details through Alison in terms of, you know, what's come through. But, you know, one of the big ones was through North 12, which they were close to 3 million of that total received. So the full year budget is 12 million. So you were halfway there. But again, it all comes down to timing and how long those resource consents take to process and the size and scale of them. But we've had a few big ones through.
Have a whole lot of the Prol Road ones been paid already in the last financial year then, or are they still to come? All those. We've got massive developments on Prol Road.
A number of those are still to come. So, for example, the Mokoroa Country Club will be as the consents come through, as opposed to as part of the wider resource consent. So there is some timing issues. What we're trying to do is get a good capture for this committee going forward around our tracked number of consents against growth for both resource consents and dwelling consents and population over a period of time, because at the moment the reporting we're providing to you is against the last quarter, noting that the last 2 years we have had significant growth above what was projected from smart growth. So we're probably more just kind of easing at this point in time, but we'll give you that substantive information at the next meeting, if not before. I know that you'd asked for that as part of our long-term plan considerations, so we'll get that information through to councillors over the next week or so.
Thank you, Adele and Alison. One for Jim or Cedric, because we've been tracking along the Amokara roundabout was going to be kind of diggers in the ground in November, and that's tomorrow. I know the report states about land issues and a couple of other things. What's the latest guesstimate? Will it happen this construction summer?
If anything does happen this construction summer, it'll be site clearing and potentially some power relocation, because all the overhead power that's there now has to be relocated in and across private property. So PowerCo is one of the risk items there in terms of resourcing a design, the landowner or agreements and lease or terms and conditions and how long. But also we do have procurement of property and that's ongoing at the moment, those discussions around agreed values. So as well as the stormwater treatment options for the whole project. So there are a number of issues that we have to resolve.
So it kind of looks like 12-month slippage to me to resolve
It
power lines,
yep.
stormwater and land purchase. It might be November next year before the diggers start.
We would hope to start earlier than that. But the other question is the current funding is Kaingora funding through the previous government. The GPS is not due out draft until February. So we'll just progress, carry on as fast as we can, see where we get to.
Your question before I do move in a second.
It's raised it when you talked about the roundabout, Amokara roundabout. The people on Youngson Road were really worried about their in and out access into the roundabout. Have you resolved that issue, Jim?
We have a draft design that we believe was going to suit the landowners, but one of them wants to take a truck and trailer up his driveway, which means we're now looking at two alternative options for that side of the road, so it's unresolved at this stage.
It's quite dangerous now, and can you resolve that?
We can resolve it with an alternative design. The worst case is they would carry on using that existing entranceway with only the ability to left in, left out into one of the approach lanes for the roundabout. Not ideal, because we believe currently they're taking a right turn truck and trailer movement in there outside of peak flow times. And they have mentioned that they get access to the south on Old Highway for truck and trailer movement. So we're in a position of questioning the legitimacy of the request because we could get by with just a truck movement with the design that's been done to date. So as I said, there's a few issues there in terms of the access, the Waka Kotahi property, the existing rental that's there, the existing land boundaries, and also the power, undergrounding the power also impacts that area as well.
Mr. Chairman, you're saying that we can get underway about next November?
I was saying that.
No, the intention is we could go in and clear the site fairly quickly, vegetation. The landowners we've been talking to are quite happy with that. But the next stage of starting to do the physical construction works is still uncertain. So it won't be this current calendar year. No, the current one we're in, it won't be before Christmas.
But you will be by next Christmas?
We expect to be by next Christmas, yes, but we have to resolve those outstanding issues. Yep.
They'll build TNL2 by then, Margaret, so it'll be all spliced and dug up and dropped 9 metres. Right, I need to move in a second to receive the operational report. Councillor Coxhead, Councillor Crawford. I'll put that all in favour. Declare that carried. Thank you, team. I declare the meeting closed at 11:17. Horowai, do you need any time to sort out for the workshop if we transition straight to it? No one's. I will give you a minute to leave Alan and Rodney in place. Right, team, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4,